In the last video, we started talking a bit about the DOM and what it is and how it's not exactly the HTML of the page, but it's a representation of the HTML, and that we use the DOM to manipulate it and manipulate the actual HTML that we see. So with JavaScript, we can grab pieces of the DOM and manipulate it. So let's write an example of how we could get an element on the DOM. So the first thing we would do is call document, because the document is basically like the DOM. And we can call methods on the DOM. So the first method I want to show you is the querySelector method. And so what querySelector does is we can pass something inside of querySelector that will grab a piece of the DOM, namely one of the HTML elements. You're not getting the actual HTML element, you're getting the DOM representation. Again, it's very, very similar and kind of confusing, but you want to separate those concepts in your head. So if I put H1, not caps lock, H1, there we go. You can see immediately that I'm going to get this title, H1 ID title, the DOM. And I'm doing that directly in the console right now, but I could go ahead and show you in a separate JavaScript document here. I can make a variable and get a reference to that element. So document.querySelector H1. And if I console log H1 and I refresh the page, you'll see that I have effectively grabbed that H1 element with my querySelector code. So I've grabbed a piece of the DOM, and I could manipulate that piece of the DOM. I could do something like h1.textContent, which refers exactly to what you might think it means. It's referring to this text, the DOM, that was typed into the index.html. And I could do something along the lines of hello world. I could change the text of that element. So if I refresh the page, you'll notice that the HTML changed. That wasn't what was initially typed in to the page. It was the DOM. But with JavaScript, I grabbed a hold of that H1 and I edited its text content. And so make sure, again, separate it, that I didn't literally grab the HTML. I grabbed the DOM representation of the H1 and changed its text content, and the browser noticed that change and updated the HTML accordingly. So again, fine distinction. If we actually viewed the page source of this site, you'll notice that it still has the original HTML that we had. So it's neat, it's interesting. So to the two main methods that we cover, or I shouldn't say methods, but the two main things that we covered in relation to the DOM in terms of manipulating it, we can grab something, a piece of the DOM with querySelector, and we can take that piece that we've grabbed and edit its text.